Welcome to the Busted Fighters Repaired Daily podcast. On Busted Fighters, we discuss sports medicine topics important to MMA athletes, their doctors, therapists, trainers, and coaches. Our guests tell their story of recovery from a specific injury, what worked for them, what didn't, and why. I'm your host, Matt Colby. I'm a chiropractic sports physician, and I focus on the problems MMA athletes run into during training, fight camps, and competition. I'm here with my friends Tom Allman, Matt Andrade, and two special guests, both personal friends of mine. The first is Mike Goldberg. He's the voice of MMA. He does play-by-play for Bellator. You know who he is. What you don't know is that he's also a really good hockey player, and his Muay Thai is actually pretty damn solid, even though he shows up late to train just about every day. The second is our Muay Thai coach, Master Paul McGowan. He's a very fit 44-year-old. He does Ironman triathlons and trains a lot of fighters here in Phoenix. Today's topic was training over the age of 40. We talked about how to start MMA over the age of 40, challenging yourself without breaking yourself, how we differentiate soreness from injury, how we recover from hard training sessions, and more. Mike talked a lot about how he stays healthy on the road and fit, and we had a lot of fun. So here it is, how to keep training as you keep aging, with Mike Goldberg and Master Paul McGowan. So our topic for today, because it's the three of us here, is training MMA over the age of 40, which presents certain challenges. And so today what we want to talk about is how we stay healthy. How are we able to keep going? How many times a week we're able to train, the things we do to mitigate the inflammation and small injuries along the way. So I'd like to just open it up and maybe start with you, Master Paul, and say, and ask, what do you most recommend for your people that come to Chandler MMA over the age of 40? They're not super well conditioned. They want to get into it, but they don't want to show up to work Monday broken.
I think the biggest thing is most of these people have to know their limitations themselves. They can't go out there and think they're 21 anymore or 18 and be a young whippersnapper and be jumping around the place, especially if they have no experience whatsoever. They don't even know how to throw a punch. They don't know how to stand. They don't know how to sprawl, grapple. They don't know anything at all, and they just want to start learning. You've got to really go basic and start with fundamentals. And that's the difference between a lot of gyms that are maybe just cardio kickboxing gyms, and then gyms that are what I would prefer to call ourselves academies, where it's a learning center. So you start to learn and you build foundations. You start with the fundamentals and start building and building. And you put them into a different category, and then you'll see them get better and better and better over time, repetition, consistency. You're going to be sore. I mean, if you're 40 years of age and you walk in my door right away, you're going to be sore for 2 months consistently. But that's the one word that everybody misses out on, because when they come in and they train and you're looking at trying to come back the next morning and they try to get out of bed and they go, oh, Jesus Christ, can't fucking move, right? Right away, it's the best time to walk in the door and immediately get the body used to moving and keep moving and go through the soreness, and time will ultimately be your best friend, but time and consistency.
Showing up on the days you don't want to show up.
100%.
Even if it's just to move around.
Even if you got on the spin bike in the back of the studio and you just spun to flush out the lactic acid, or you got in, even if you got into your pool and you swam around, you get that no weight bearing exercise to help you out a little bit. But most guys, they get sore and they go, oh, I don't want to do it. And then they go, the cheeseburger looks better now and the beer looks better tonight. Let me just dive into it again. And they're back into the same old routine versus trying to surpass that, get beyond it first couple of months, and all of a sudden you see that amazing change. I have a guy that comes in 6 mornings a week. He's in there. I think he's a year or two older than me. He's a little heavier.
So he's 67?
Right, he's 85. Brian Neal. Brian. Brian's been in. He's one of your patients. He comes and sees you. But that's probably one of the greatest stories I can tell. That guy came in and he was 40 pounds overweight.
He looks completely different.
And what a difference now. But he is consistent. Is he sore every other day? Of course he is, because he's getting challenged every other day to be better and better and better. But he looks phenomenal. He's got great technique. And now you see after a while a guy who just came in to sit and watch his kids do martial arts, and now he's on the mat every day. He's looking at the new guy walking in the door and going, oh, keep your hand up. You're dropping this one. Mm-hmm. So he's just picking up and it's flowing.
I've definitely found myself, one thing I've found myself getting better at, starting jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai at the age of 35 and now 42, is I used to go to the gym on days I feel good and blow it out spend 2 or 3 days recovering,
Yeah.
show up again, blow it
And
out.
kill yourself.
And yeah, pace is huge.
Pace
and
is
with
everything.
Brian, you were just talking about the progression from, Brian's before and after photo. It's probably a 2-year thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a
Definitely.
2-month thing.
No, it's not. But after 2 months, at least that initial, oh my God, I can't move, kind of gets a little bit better and better and better. Diet is, 90% of it too. It's what you're putting into the body is going to help you. You've got to be taking the right kinds of things. You don't have to be a crazy. I don't take any supplements. At 44, I don't take really anything. But eating well, is important. Everyone, you can have your burger and you can have your pizza and you can have your beer on the weekend, but everything in moderation. Mm-hmm. Training in moderation, food in moderation, alcohol in moderation, everything in moderation,
Mike, you have the same challenges I do regarding pace and training and stuff, but on top of that, you've got traveling around the planet. What do you do? Do you train at all the gyms at the hotels? Do you find gyms in each city you go to? What's the story?
First, I'll take it back to, I'm 55 years old now, Matt, and I feel 55 some days and
You look at too.
35 some. And, right now, my wife says, go salt and pepper. I said, it's going to be all salt. That's where we are. But when I first started training Muay Thai in my 30s, being as competitive as I have been my entire life, especially in hockey and coaching with that discipline and give it all, and the old no pain, no gain, I would rip the pads. I would try to hit everything as hard as I could. And I got pretty good pretty quickly. And I got the powerful, lower body because of my hockey. Well, a couple of weeks into it, I find myself with an ace bandage around my elbow and then one around my knee. And when it took me 20 minutes to wrap and tape myself before I could even get started, I knew I was going too hard. And so one torn bicep tendon and one torn rotator cuff later, I went, wait a second, there's a better way to do this. And I think what you need to do at my age is, first and foremost, utilize proper technique. And that's something that Paul's worked with me continuously over the years. If I turn my hip the right way, I don't have to rip it. Master always say, goalie, you got a ton of power. So don't put your body in a position where you really are beating it down. Be sharp, be fast, pop, 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 and then throw the big one, but be smart about it. And honestly, have a smart trainer like Paul McGowan, because I've had guys who hold pads and stuff me, and that's how I blew out my shoulder. And if people listen don't know, kind of stuffing with the pads is like when they meet you with the pads is good, but when the guy's twice your size and he comes down and you're throwing kind of an uppercut, but on an angle or a high jab, all of a sudden my shoulder I knew immediately something was wrong.
Which might be decent pad holding technique for one of their other athletes.
Correct.
Yeah.
But never the best for anybody, because, let's say there's a little dude, let's say Henry Cejudo's working pads with this guy. First of all, he's taller, so Henry's angle is going to be bad. Secondly, if he's coming down with force meets force, and down, the up's going to lose. The down's going to win. So I've learned over the years to be more responsible with it, to work my body to a point where I walk out of there feeling good. I got a great sweat, but I also know that I can't kill myself and not be able to walk the next day. Because Master's right, I won't come in. I won't come in. And if I do, my back, I've always had back problems, and you know, because I've been on your table a lot, and, I thank you for that over the years, and you've helped me out a lot with it. But when your back hurts, like mine did for so many years, you literally can't go. I mean, like Master said, going when you're sore, trying to flush it out is great, and I try to do that when I can. But if you're literally in, an 8 or a 9 in pain with your back, then you did too much the day before.
It grinds you
and then it grinds you down, and then you stop going. I'm spoiled here at home to have someone with the knowledge of Master McGowan to walk into the gym and have him say, do X, Y, and Z. So it makes it a little difficult for me, Matt, on the road, because I'm guided or babied, but I'm guided by Paul, and he just tells me what to do. I don't have to think about it.
Yep.
So when I'm on the road, I just try to get on the treadmill, even if it's just stay in your target heart zone. stay at 130 or 135 and just walk for an hour and read some notes on some fighters. I try to stay consistent in that way. And
we
rest.
did that
you
for
have
a
to
while.
rest.
I remember a couple of years ago, you were saying, send me something. You guys send me something. And I would just write up a little something for him, and he'd go down to the hotel gym and do something. Or many times, it was great over the years, I'd go and meet him in Vegas when he was calling for the UFC. And we would go to fights, and then I would hold pads from up there. I'd bring pads in the car or something, and we'd go down to the local hotel. I think some of the greatest sessions we had was when I forgot pads. We just used hands. We had a couple of great workouts. One he was on the road, so it was great.
Yeah. You guys would do those workouts in the arena sometimes too, I think.
For sure. And I was lucky enough over the years that the Mark Delagratis and the Duke Rufuses and friends of mine over the years, I was very fortunate that they would bring me in. And all of this has helped me be a better commentator in the sport of mixed martial arts. And so to learn something from Duke, to learn something from Crew Mark, to learn something from Master Paul McGowan and the many others that I've worked with over the years, not only is it fun, because learning is fun and that snap of the pads is always great, but also it's making me a better commentator. I remember a couple of times, I was in the room one time, maybe working with Mark, and Mark was always really good at working on things that I needed to improve when nobody was in the room, but when the fighters came in, he'd go to like my 5 go-to combinations, and he'd make me look like a red belt, basically. He really would. So I've gotten some good compliments. Jacare one time was commenting about my kicks. He's like, "Holy, that's nasty." And then, I walk out of there and I'm limping for 2 days because I was showing off with him there. But it is a ton of fun. But at my age, I do have to be smart. Yeah. And you do have to understand that rest is part of it. And we're all from that generation, like I said, no pain, no gain. And that really isn't the way to train.
No, warm
in this
up.
day.
You got to warm up. That's especially over 40. The warming up is 90% of it to try and be injury free, and then you can ramp up the training slowly but surely. But it depends on many things. You go from the person that walks in that just wants to hit the bag and learn Muay Thai and training MMA to guys that are getting even more and more and more, and you're getting into harder, higher training, like triathlons, or look at the Diaz brothers. I mean, they're not older yet, right? But they're still stay in phenomenal tip-top shape. They're really pushing the peaks of the body, but you got to rest as well.
You do. And one word that keeps coming up is fun, right? Because the thing about training
you gotta love
Muay Thai, MMA, Jiu-Jitsu is it's fun.
It's got to be fun.
So one of my biggest challenges is Saturday open mat Jiu-Jitsu. I will go and sometimes blow myself to pieces because we'll stay for hour 45, 2 hours, train way harder, and it's hard to stop. It's hard to cut it off.
Well, because you love it.
Exactly. Now, Paul, with you doing competitive Ironman triathlon, I'd imagine your training there is easier to dial back because, okay, I've been pumping this bicycle for an hour and a half. Oh, I really want to pump it for another 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I bet I
want to get off.
That's easier to shut off than having fun with your friends.
Yeah, so when you walk in already 12 minutes late and Master says, go do your mile on the treadmill, and you're about 3 minutes in and you start whining, and he's already put in 47 miles in the pool and 27 miles on the ground, he just gives me this look. And his wife's, Kara's already had 3 workouts as well. I'm kind of like, well, where's Connor and Declan? And no, they probably worked out this morning. I'm not getting much love, man. I'm not getting off the hook, 3 minutes into the treadmill at Chandler MMA when this guy's gone out and, run around Phoenix up to Pine Top and back by the time I get there at 9:30 or 9:37 or so.
That's how I tore my quadricep, was not stretching out. And it's not as glamorous as mixed martial arts or anything, but it was a softball tournament, and I didn't stretch out. Ran down to first, heard a pop, and that was it.
You tore his quad. Yeah.
Well, the first thing was softball. I mean, no wonder you tore it. So you have to pick a manly sport, will you?
Well, I've done it coaching hockey. I've done it coaching hockey. Because you don't think about warming up, all of a sudden I'm.
Yeah, but that's a manly sport.
Well, it is,
I know.
exactly. But I'm jumping in on drills when I can because I love being out there with the boys. And I take a slap shot from the top of the circles, and it exploded. Jeez. But much to your point, it's because I got on. I was in my sweats. I like, all right, let's shoot the puck. And then it just caught me the wrong way. And you treated me that time, Matt. I mean, I was black, blue, purple, green. It was ugly. And it took a long time to heal. And that's another thing, too, for me, is that to go play men's league or to go towards master, totally different set of muscles. And so I've tried more recently to work where it'll make me better and stronger, and my back will be more secure and more stable so that I can enjoy men's league. My son's on my men's league team now, and I always say, Cole, how come you never pass it to me? He goes, Dad, because you're still way back in the neutral zone. When I'm at the top of the circles, like, if you catch up, I'd pass it to you, which I don't really believe, but he's right. But he's 20 years old, too.
And then you start favoring that injury, and then
For sure.
that rolls
Yes.
it rolled to my ankle, and then my other knee started hurting, and I'm like, holy shit,
Yep.
I'm breaking down.
There's definitely a chain reaction that can happen with injuries
Well-
for any athlete, but especially for us.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So, well, talking about that, and then you talk about overtraining at an older age. That's why I'm in a boot right now. I have a plantar tear, and then I have a messed up other foot with bunion and other stuff. At 44, you can't run a marathon on a Saturday and then go hike Squaw Peak on a Monday 10 times in a row up and down. Or you end up like this.
But you do.
But you do because you're...
No, you do.
Yeah, because I do. 'Cause I'm stubborn.
Because you're not the smartest one.
No, stubborn.
Stubborn. There you go.
Irishman.
That's the nice way to
Well,
say
like
it.
I was saying, and I've said this in the clinic to a lot of people before, that Master Paul's the fittest 44-year-old I know. And as we're sitting here talking about recovery and stuff, we don't ever really see Paul dedicating days to recovering, right? So he'd just be like this guy who just
Fix
keeps
me.
going and
Fast.
keeps going and keeps going.
That's when you're
And
Ireland.
Fix me.
when you suffered this injury most recently, it was like, wow, he finally pushed it to the point. He finally broke. But tell us a little bit about that, because you did a full marathon, right?
Oh, well...
And then the next day,
yeah.
why did you climb?
No, I think you can, if you go back, you have to go
Okay.
back. And in 2019, I did 3 full Ironmans in 12 months. So that's a lot for 44. I went to Cozumel, I did an Ironman. I went to Ireland, I did a full Ironman. And I went to back to Arizona here in November, and I did a full Ironman. But I also did 3 full marathons in that same year as well. And I did 3 half Ironmans, and plus countless other training runs and all that type of crazy stuff. But the kicker was Phoenix Marathon Saturday, and Monday, Squaw Peak 10 times up and down in a row without stopping, 10 and a half hours. That's where I wrecked it, just killed it. And I had a coach, and she said, don't do it, but I did it.
You were doing it for
I was doing it for charity.
too.
Yeah, I throw it out here.
Extra motivation.
Yeah, well, I belong to a nonprofit called Together We Live, and we help children and adults with IDD, intellectual and developmental disabilities, and we bring them on our journey for either running or triathlons, 5Ks, 10Ks, marathons, halves, fulls, whatever it may be, and try and raise awareness to get these young people or young adults out into the community and feel like they belong. And that day was about all raising awareness. So we climbed it up and down and up and down, and we posted every time, number 1, number 2, number 3. But of course, at the same time then at 44, after running a 3-hour and 10-minute marathon 2 days before, I should have been rested and had my feet up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably what overdid it, you know.
And with Together We Live, I know you also, that's a part of the many of the triathlons you do.
Yeah.
Is it mostly younger people with cerebral palsy?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say younger. I'd say most of the people that we have in our organization right now is ranging anyways from 16 years old to 30 or 40-year-olds, you know, guys that were, or girls that were born that way with cerebral palsy or many different things. And lately it's been wounded vets. We have a couple of wounded vets that have been coming in and taking care of them and putting them in the chair and taking them on a race with us too.
Awesome.
But predominantly it's been the IDD community, intellectual and developmental disabilities, which is pretty cool to get about.
Well,
there.
I've seen a lot of pictures, you know, that you've posted and shown me on your phone, Master, and just the smile on your face, and it doesn't even come close to the smile that you put on that young man or woman's face that you're pushing for 15 miles, whatever it is. So, and we've talked about it before. I mean, that is a true feeling of being blessed, and to have that like good feeling yourself, but to know that who you are doing it for, you've made their month, their year, whatever it is. That's what it's all about.
But that's where it's stressing the body, and I think
course.
over 40.
Because it's different form, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're pushing
you get
something.
130 pounds in a
Sure.
wheelchair, and you're pushing it up a hill, or you're putting it on the back of the bicycle, and you're cycling and pulling. It's like a parachute behind you. All this is stressing the body and stressing the body and stressing the body. And then in my line of work, I'd go out on a Sunday, and I might do a race or do a triathlon or do something with that extra load of 130 pounds, bringing it with me the whole way, 3-4 hours. You know, I'm exhausted afterwards, wrecked. Well, Monday morning, I'm going into the gym, and I'm holding pads then for killers right away, or I'm teaching a boot camp or doing something else. I'm not going to an office and sitting down and going, la-di fucking da, right? It's not like, it's just more added stress on the body. So I think, yeah, it's tough. I mean, I thank the Lord for Matt Colby, because there's times when I'm like, dude, I'm wrecked. Can you crack me, pop me, help me, do something? Give me anything. What can you do? And then I'm over to see him, you know, because that's the build your body back up again. Go to the person that knows what are you after doing, what's the load on your body, and then what they have to do and tell you to recover and prepare for the next weekend or the next week or whatever else is coming, you know.
Do you wear compression sleeves when you race and stuff?
Sometimes. It depends. I would more so for recovery than anything else. I'd even sleep with compression, like almost like yoga pants, but they're compression, and I sleep with them sometimes to help recover.
I just started wearing compression sleeves, and I'm surprised how effective they are. Yeah, not just in the gym or at the work day. I'm on my feet all day, and my cardiologist encouraged me to wear them. And not just for performance, but for recovery too. I'll find myself on Sundays, like if I have a big Saturday open mat day, Sundays I put them on, I just feel better, you know? And I like to I really like to look at research and what's proven, but sometimes you have to kind of go off label a little bit and
what
say,
feels good.
I'm trying this feels good, I'm going to keep doing it.
Ice baths, I think, are the greatest thing ever. Just people won't do it. They have, they're supposed to have a penis and have a vagina. That's the truth. People don't like it. Sorry, it is what it is. But get sick. I've told you this 100 times. I'll go run 10 to 20 miles and go get 60 pounds of ice and put it in the tub and fill it full of whatever cold water we have here in Arizona, which is not much, and get into it and sit in it for 2 beers.
One thing we see.
Well, you could actually have 6 or 7. You just leave the other beers in right next to you in the ice bath.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'd be nice and cold.
Even if
I
they
did a
not
bunch
use
of
the
those at
bathroom.
Neuroforce too.
Yep.
And not only is it great, because what do they say when you have inflammation? They say ice it. Well, now you're taking your entire body and you're icing it.
It's phenomenal.
And it really does. And it shocks the system. It brings the blood forward. It's not a great thing if, you get out immediately and, you were going to do a photo shoot naked. It wouldn't be the best picture that would ever come out. But it definitely wakes you up in a Yeah. It does a certain thing for you that, it's cold as can be. But when you get out, there's a different feeling. And a couple hours later, you definitely feel refreshed because of it. Now, everybody doesn't have the opportunity to do that. And so what I did is I purchased a machine that is a compression machine that you and I talked about, Matt, that basically I'll put something around my back and it's Velcroed, and then it hooks. And so you fill it with ice and water, and it pumps the cold ice and water into like the Velcro that's around my back.
It works amazingly
and
well.
I think it's you who put one on me,
Like
or
Game Ready?
Neuroforce, and then, get ready. That's exactly what it is.
Game Ready?
Yeah, Game Ready. It's
Game
the
Ready, yeah,
affordable version of Game Ready is exactly what it is, and it's marvelous.
It works surprisingly well, because when you put the half ice, half water in this machine, well, of course, that water is only going to get down to about 34 degrees, but that's really all you need, especially with the compression. It works really well.
Yeah.
From a research standpoint, there's been a lot of debate in the sports med community over the last few years about ice, because it's one of those things that ever since they started saying, RICE, rest, ice, compression, elevation, it's sort of been the standard. But from a research standpoint, it's hard to prove that it reduces inflammation. And some papers and stuff have even suggested it could do the opposite. And that's where we started talking about going off-label and into things that
Make you
maybe
feel
aren't
better.
proven. But the thing is, if it feels good,
Sure.
that we don't know exactly everything it does, but it must be doing something because I feel better after. One thing a lot of fighters do here in Phoenix, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably already know Phoenix is a huge MMA town. For whatever reason, there's 20 amazing gyms to train at. There's tons of pro fighters here, tons of different wrestling programs and stuff. And when it comes to recovery, one thing you see on social media a lot is fighters mid-camp in Phoenix, when it's winter here, jumping in the swimming pool. And that's one thing that we get to take advantage of here in Phoenix in the winter, because
Absolutely.
even though it's winter here,
Yeah.
the temperature's okay, but the pool's icy cold.
Yeah.
We're kind of past that season now,
Yeah.
where the pool's just wet.
Yeah.
But during, November, December,
It's awesome.
big, huge workout, jump in the
In the pool, just hang out in the pool.
freeze as much as you can.
Yep.
Make sure there's someone there with you.
Yep.
And then out and into either compression sleeves.
Compression is what I would do. The sleeves
Right
all-
after?
right into my the ones that you had at your place. You
Yeah.
know, the one you put your legs in and
Yeah,
plug it in.
I love those.
They were
And,
really good.
So compression boots, right?
Compression boots.
Normatec's the most popular brand.
Yeah.
But I found this brand called Air Relax, and they're only like $300 and some odd dollars.
I have a pair. I have a
$380.
pair
Yeah.
at home, and I just sit in them all the time. They're awesome.
They're stronger than the Normatec boots, and you can get a really good squeeze on your legs with those. One thing that MMA fighters ask for a day or two before the fight, if someone's treating them, at the hotel or whatever, is they want like a half-hour, 40-minute leg massage, not so much that they get sore, and then compression boots after. Lots of times they call it a massage and flush,
Yeah.
right? Massage the legs out, flush them out one last time before the event, and it
So
works
that's
amazing.
so funny. When I was training for my first Ironman back in 2014, I had a kind of schedule leading right up to it. And on a Wednesday, I would come in and see you, and you would realign me. If I had any ailments or injuries, you would take care of them. Fridays was my long bike ride. I do a 100-mile bike ride, get off, run 5 miles. The next day, then I get up and run 22 miles, have a 4,000-meter swim, ice bath, then back to your place again, and I would get a massage, and it was phenomenal. Remember that girl, Melissa Carey? She was awesome.
In Seattle.
She did the Titanic on me. This was fucking awesome. She was awesome.
I miss her every day.
She put her knees on my glutes, and she was a big girl, and then she grabbed my shoulders and pull them back and go, wow, and she'd go, Titanic. It was fucking awesome.
Well, that whole stretch to win is something that
Yeah,
obviously
that's good stuff.
you've trained in, and
Yeah.
and Frederick is about 5'1", 100 pounds, and I remember going in there on Fridays because I had a doctor that was doing IVs and stuff with me, the Myers cocktail, if you will, Dr. Brian Popeil, and Carlos Stansby was in there one day, and they were getting ready for the Sunday game. And I just heard Carlos like whining, like he was in tears. And this, like she's like little, but they've got the straps and everything going. And then he goes, "Damn, no, and my body does not go that way. This one is not happening, not happening." And you're talking about like an all-pro linebacker, and he was crying like a little kid. And then I was even more so afterwards. But anything that can keep the muscles. The elasticity of the muscle is the key, and that's going to prevent blowouts like you had. Playing. You can be playing softball. You can be playing in the front yard with your kid and running and goofing around and chasing them and blow out something if you're older because your muscles are all of a sudden either fatigued and tight or just age and the elasticity of the muscle starts to
Or
shrink
you're
over time.
slowly losing the length in a muscular chain
Right.
with each workout you do.
Right.
And I think for people in our demographic, the muscle, that's important, but tendons, right? Your tendons, when you have a
Right.
big brutal workout and you're hurting 3 days later at our age, it's your tendons that are saying, "Fuck you, I don't want to do this anymore."
But that misconception, obviously, then is the old school thought of stretching and warming up. And talk about hockey. You see it all the time when I was doing off-ice training for your guys. And they'd go out on cold ice without warming up, sit down on the ice, and stretch. What the hell are you doing? So it should be dynamic warm-up, not static. And then static at the end when there's buckets of sweat falling out of you so you get the most gains out of your flexibility. And people do it opposite. They do static in the beginning, and then they don't do anything at the end, right? Instead of dynamic warm-up in the beginning, get it all flowing, get it moving nice and easy so you don't overdo it, overcommit, overstretch, over whatever. And then at the end, when you are just hot and sweaty, then get that big, deep stretch in. People just don't do it enough.
Andre Gaval, a world-renowned jiu-jitsu competitor
yeah.
and coach and everything, he's a big, huge guy who's incredibly flexible. And I saw a video, I think it was a couple of years ago, where he was explaining for mobility, he's like, if you're a big guy with a lot of muscle, once you're warmed up, like say after training, that's your chance to get those real changes in your active and passive range of motion, because your joints, all your interstitial tissue is warmed up, and now's the time to get it, especially for bigger guys.
So, if you're in Michigan and you're part of the USA Hockey Developmental Program, so you're an elite hockey player, even at the age of 13, 14, 15, that's your schooling, though. That you're there the whole day, and so you take your classes, and then you have a different time. And so what Paul's talking about with the stretching out for younger kids or youth hockey, it oftentimes becomes a matter of time, and more so in the sport of hockey, because you pay a lot of money for an hour's worth of ice. And if the kids are coming 3 or 4 times a week and mom and dad have to drive them, to have them always show up for practice 30 or 45 minutes early, that's tough as well. Now, on a game day, the boys always go outside and they go through their stretch routine as a team, and their sweats, and it's a bonding as much as getting ready. But to Paul's point, why don't they do it in practice? A lot of times it's because of the time. Now, if you're at USA Hockey, I'm a level 5 USA Hockey certified coach. That's what they tell you. They show you the dynamic stretch, the dynamic workout. Then you go in practice, and then you have the dynamic cool down, then the recovery, the ice bath, the stretch, whatever it is. But it does oftentimes become a time constraint, and especially with our subject right here being over 40, or a lot of us have full-time jobs. So you go in and you maybe only do have an hour with master, or if you're late like me, you have 47 minutes. And so what's the first thing we sacrifice, though? We sacrifice either the warm-up or the cool-down. I hate to stretch. Well, why do you hate to stretch? Because it hurts. Well, why does it hurt? Because you don't stretch. And so it's a vicious cycle that you have to break at one point. And I'll admit, it's a difficult thing to do. The ice that we were talking about, like the game ready, for me, it was always like, okay, old school, you go get a bag, you put ice in it. Well, what happens 5 minutes later? It's leaking all over the place. So you kind of go, all right, I'm not going to ice. Then you get the little things that you freeze in the freezer. Okay, well, they're warm in about 20 minutes, so that's no good. So that's where I like the machine, Matt, because it will consistently push cold and ice on my back for an hour and a half, and I don't have to do anything about it. So it does simplify that ice it technology.
The convenience makes it so
Correct.
do it more consistent.
And I feel the benefits of it. I just didn't want to deal with the cleanup of all the water and the bags, and you wrap yourself up, and 2 minutes later it's warm.
Yeah.
Was there anything to heat, cold, kind of like the gauntlet like we used to run?
Yeah. Contrast therapy. Back when Tom and I used to work out at Lifetime Fitness, before we had kids, had nothing to do, we would train, and then and afterwards we would do what we call the gauntlet, which is we'd go into the steam room, for 10, 15 minutes, then go out, cold plunge into the pool, then go in the dry sauna, 10 or 15 minutes, cold plunge into the pool, then do the hot tub, 10, 15 minutes, cold plunge in the pool. Now that hour or so,
it's an hour workout.
Yeah.
Perfect. It's my favorite.
But that's how the Swedes and that's how the Scandinavians do it, though.
Polar
When I
bears.
when I was in Minnesota, I was a TV voice of the Minnesota Wild. Darby Hendrickson, figure out the name. Darby Hendrickson, that was the philosophy. Cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot 3 times. So we were at his lake house. He had a sauna, and the lake was cold. And so he would say, Goldie, we do it 3 times. So you get your body really warm, you run down to the lake, you jump in the lake, you go back to the sauna, you jump down, you go back. So a lot of the European athletes still do utilize that technique. In fact, they've grown up doing it that way. And Darby, with his background in the Scandinavian and the Swedes, and especially, the demographics of the state of Minnesota, hockey-wise, we should point out officially right now, that is kind of ingrained in their culture. And it's 3 times. It's always the same routine, but it's what you guys were talking about. Hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold.
And going back to, it feels fucking amazing.
No question about
afterwards.
it.
You're
And
just
that
like,
it gives you a quicker feel of the ice bath because you get a quick shock with the ice bath, but then you can go and be a baby and get warm.
Yeah,
then you get it again, and then you go get warm again.
Yeah.
So, same concept, right?
Your hog goes from one size to the next.
Or in your case,
From
it just
little
stays the same.
to not so little.
One thing we should probably mention, and one thing that gyms and gym owners and coaches and stuff should probably think about if they are training everybody and they're training guys like us too, is, and even with switching from hot to cold water and things like that, is the importance of CPR training. Right? It's kind of a morbid topic, but the statistics say this is going to happen to someone you know eventually in a workout situation. And one thing, over the past year, I took a course that was through the Olympic Training Center, and one thing that really hit me hard when we were doing our healthcare provider level CPR training was AEDs, automatic electronic defibrillators, right? Those are those defibrillators you see in restaurants and things like that. And there's some amazing statistics with AEDs. So AEDs now are entirely automatic. They're designed so anyone can use them. You know, people see them and they're sort of intimidated by them, especially if they're not CPR trained. But these things are designed to be opened up, put on somebody by somebody who has no idea what they're doing, and
press a button
quite
and you're done.
possibly save their life. And some of the statistics that go along with it are amazing because our teacher, who is the former director of sports medicine at the Olympic Training Center, especially during the Sochi Olympics, he said that, you know, if you find yourself doing CPR on somebody who's having a myocardial event and they're out, their odds of making it are less than 50%. I forget, it's kind of rough statistics. It's something like 40 some odd percent. I want to say it was 47%, but I'm not sure. But if an AED is put on that person within the first minute, that their chances of survival go up. Wait, hold on, I'm screwing this up. If the AED is put on them, I believe within the first 3 minutes, their odds go from the upper 40% all the way up to possibly 70%. Now, that's great, but for every minute that the AED is delayed after that, like someone can't find it or there's one in the business next door,
Sure.
their odds go back down up to 10% more.
Wow.
So within 4 or 5 minutes, you're right back down to 40%.
Here's what's something we've done over the years that's really cool. We brought in a foundation called the Anthony Bates Foundation into our gym. We brought it back in the polar ice days when we were there. We first did it years and years ago. A lady put me in touch with him. Anthony Bates was a young man, I think, at Mountain Point High School at the age of like 17 or 18, dropped dead.
That's where Matt went to high school.
Yeah.
Right? Like just
Yeah,
dropped.
yeah.
You remember that kid or anything?
Yeah,
No? Just
yeah.
dropped dead. So his mother, Sharon Bates, phenomenal lady, created the foundation, obviously, after she lost her son. And now she's been everywhere. She goes to almost every school in the valley, and she does this free, and doctors give her time and all this type of stuff. But the really cool thing about it is, I think it was our second or third time to do it. We just did it last year. And I think we screened over 100 kids. She's primarily done for kids, but adults can come in and they'll won't charge anything. So kids come in, do it for free. If you want to give a donation, give a donation. If an adult wants to do it, strongly suggest, look, give a donation. It's really cool. We got 3 people with heart issues. Kids that you thought are completely healthy, right? Never mind adults that are over 40, but they're catching kids that are doing this thing. But she made us do this course online, all our staff, and for doing that, then we get gifted an AED machine, which is kind of cool.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And
So I want to use it on Goldie next time. Give me 100
Sometimes
kicks.
I need it just to wake up.
100 kicks. Let me try this thing.
another great thing about AEDs too is they're designed, like, if they need to go, they run their own test. If they need to go off, they will go off and give you instructions.
Yeah.
If they don't need to go off, they won't. So essentially, you
Very
can't
easy.
hurt somebody with
Yeah.
it.
Does it come with paddles if you want to rub them together like in TV?
No. They're like stickers, like electrodes. So
They-
literally, you open the box, it says stick this here, hit this button.
And that's it. It's easy.
And they save lives like crazy.
If you run Tom, stickers would have to be this size. This size.
Now, so we've been talking a lot about maintenance and the buildup of inflammation and injury and wear and tear, and but then we also have to address, what about acute injury? Like Goldie, we talked about your shoulder that cost you 6, 8, 12 months, right?
For sure.
Master Paul is going through a torn plantar fascia and peroneal tendon issue right now that we're looking to hopefully get some stem cell going on, stem cell and PRP,
Yep.
just to sort of shorten this journey. Matt over here has a really interesting story. We're kind of cheating because Matt's a hair under 40, right?
38.
Gotcha. So Matt,
40.
Matt's a Marine, a veteran, a power lifter, and he had a really interesting injury that led to some systemic things a little while back. You want to fill us in on that?
Yeah.
Because this is the type of thing that could happen to anybody at any age, but especially if if you have big, strong legs.
You're
If you have-
you're talking about the which one, the quad tear or the quad tear or the adductor?
The one with rhabdo.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that was a quad tear. I enjoy lifting, powerlifting style. I like to lift heavy.
No way.
A little bit. And normal squat session felt like what I thought was a strain, and I'm also one of those guys, if it's sore, then you're doing it right. You're just training really hard. That's all. You're
We're old school,
hard.
man.
You're going
Old
out.
school.
You're going after it. So felt nothing crazy. Like most people talk about they have the pop and all that. It was just a little bit sore, right quad, and go home, start icing it. Doing the typical rice method stuff. Couple of days later, I'm like, I'm gonna train again legs because I was doing like legs twice a week at that time. I went again, and at that point it was starting to hurt, So I cut the training short, went home, started taking aspirin, and I found out that was making it worse because actually it was a tear. It was making it bleed more. It was like 6 or 7 o'clock at night. I was like, I'm just going to shower, lay down. I woke up in the middle of the night, and it was, like, excruciating. My leg was starting to swell. I couldn't see the back of my leg, and I didn't think to look at it, but I had started to have blood pool, which I found out when I went to go to the hospital. So within, like, an hour, the pain was so intense where I was, like, almost vomiting, like, nauseated. And I was like, this isn't normal. This isn't, like, right.
Even for a Marine, it's not.
Right, yeah, I have a pretty high pain
I was gonna
tolerance,
say,
and
yes,
I was
you
like,
do.
it takes a lot for me to
Yeah.
like just, hey, I need to go to the hospital, So I was like, fuck, I need to like drive, I don't even think I can drive because I'm like fucking getting faint. I'm like I'm
Yep.
dry heaving, from the pain. So I called my dad. He lives like a couple miles away. I'm like, hey, Dad, I need you to like take me in. Is that all right? He's like, yeah. Comes over, takes me to Chandler Regional. We're going to Chandler Regional. I had like these huge basketball shorts that I had to wear because I could barely fit my leg in just like my normal shorts. So the basketball shorts were still like tight. It was huge, Get to the ER. They bring me in like right away because pain. They could tell they took my blood pressure and all that hard. They could tell I was like in pain. So like, yeah, when you bring you back, so they bring me back, give me some pain meds. The doctor that was on duty, just like a general, I guess, comes in. He looks at me and he's like, I'll be right back. And I'm like, okay. He comes back with like a surgeon and they start looking at my leg and he starts drawing on my leg, like incision marks. I didn't know at the time. It's like,
Oh, you're going to get
They
cut.
leave and he comes back again. He goes, well, good news and bad news. The good news is you're here. The bad news is we're going to try to save your leg. You're having severe compartment syndrome.
Oh, my
From
God.
like the blood that's
Right.
pulling, So within like an hour or so, I was ready to go in, and get cut open.
You were on the table.
Yeah, and they sliced me open, fasciotomy, to like alleviate the pressure, and then I was in the hospital for like 5 days for that one, just recovering. But it was a pretty awakening experience, to see like how something which I thought was little
How can it be so big?
can turn into something like you could lose your freaking leg over
Yeah.
this, man, or a limb, And I think, like Matt, you were saying that, like usually if you're larger and you have like a little bit more muscle, that's when it becomes like an issue. You know what I'm saying? That's what you said last time we were talking about
like
this.
let's say I tear an adductor or a quad. Probably not going to have systemic problems, But with Matt, we're talking about a big chunk of muscle, so there's a lot more bleeding. There's a lot more crud in your blood after the tear,
Right.
And that can lead to
Yeah, the surgeon, like I was telling you last time, I was on the table and the surgeon came out and had a picture, showed my dad, and he said that he was just like able to like stick his hand like under my skin, and he was like able to pull out the blood clots. It was how much blood had like coagulated.
Holy moly.
And what made it worse was I was pounding the aspirin. And in my head, I'm like, oh, I
Right.
need aspirin to like dull the
It's
pain.
making it worse.
But it was making it worse. It was just thinning my blood out, and I was bleeding more and more and more and more. And they're like,
Right.
it's the worst thing you could have done.
Sure.
You know? So that,
Jeez.
to do the rhabdo part was my blood, my kidneys were trying to like filter that. And there's so much like protein from the muscle breakdown from the injury that it actually was clogging my kidneys. Then I went to like rhabdomyolysis, which is like a whole nother issue. So they had me on all these IVs, and they're pounding me. And the treatment for that is just pound you with IVs, you know, and hope you don't go into full kidney failure, you know?
Unbelievable.
Oh,
Yeah.
crap.
So it was like, I
That's
could lose
scary.
my leg. Then I was on, you know, trying to fight kidney failure at the same time. You know, and like 6-7 hours before that, I was in the gym just doing squats
Right,
with
right.
a little bit of pain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Was
last
it
place you
heavy
expected it.
squats that did it, you think?
It was, you know, I wasn't even really going heavy for those 2 workouts. It, you know, it was like 60-70%, which is not.
So like 3 sets of 80 pounds.
Yeah, no. wasn't really pushing it. We wasn't really pushing it. You know,
As he picks me up and throws me through the wall
Do
right
you think
now.
then that's a product of not being stretched or warmed up properly before that
I
happened?
think it was. I think so. I think it was because at that point I had only been going at it like serious lifting for probably like a year and a half, and it was a little bit of like being ignorant and not listening to like people that know better that have been doing it a lot
Proper
longer than I
warm-up.
have. Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I paid the price for that instance. I think it would say, yeah, I didn't warm up properly, and then I think the worst thing I did was to come back 2 days later and try to do
Right.
like another workout. When I should've
Especially
listened.
the same weight and the same
Right, yeah,
kind of
you should-
intensity.
Right.
Yeah.
And then now I don't do that anymore. Like I don't even train like legs more than once a week, just because you know it encompasses a lot. But yeah, I definitely learned my lesson. But it was a pretty wild experience.
That's crazy.
When I tore my bicep tendon, I knew immediately something had popped. When I tore my shoulder, I knew immediately something had popped. When I had the tendon in my elbow that I worked with you on, Matt, and it had a partial tear, I knew immediately it had happened. But I went an average of 6 to 8 months afterwards thinking it would heal. It'll heal, it'll heal. And the way I did my bicep tendon, it was one of the first times that I was actually sparring. And so I was new to the game using my hands, and I was used to Master or whoever meet me with the pads. And so all of a sudden, it's just light sparring, but I threw a right, and there was nothing to stop it, and I extended it, and boom, it went. My shoulder was the story I said earlier about the bad angle and being stuffed. And then the other tendon was the circle pad and throwing the Mike Tyson uppercuts and really throwing hard and putting the pressure all down in here where I really hadn't thrown those type of punches that hard, turning the hip and getting into it for a long time. And playing hockey, I couldn't take face-offs literally for 3 months. This is I'll probably be able to take a face-off when we get back on the ice, thanks to being away for 3 months. Obviously, all of us in this world, on this universe, wish we weren't in this situation, but we are. But I did heal, but I was stubborn each time. And I remember I was on the golf course, and I was getting ready to do Cardinals preseason games. I was playing with Bill Lewis, you know, longtime Cardinal and Cardinal announcer, and a couple other guys. And Bill looked at my arm. He goes, "Dude, that's torn bicep tendon." And it was a long time in between, but I was on the table the next day.
Yeah.
And the Cardinals doctor did surgery on it, and those tendons, they start to shorten.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he shows me the picture, man. It looks like a little creature coming out of my arm, but like he said, he's literally had to like tug back on
Right.
it to get it to go back in place. And then Doc Sanders at the UFC did my shoulder. And again, it only took doing this for a doctor to go, "Oh, you got a problem." And then they fixed it. But I was stubborn, and that's the one thing I would say to anybody at any age, but especially as you get older, don't be stubborn, man. If you think that you've really done something, go to Arizona Biomechanics and at least have Matt take a look at you and tell you if it's something they can stim and they can massage and you're okay. It's a pull and not a tear, because there's a big difference. And once you do get back to it, there's a big difference in recovery time. Because my shoulder, and Master knows, my jab, he'd always be like, my jab would come from a weird angle, or he'd always yell at me about keeping my left hand up. And part of it was, getting fatigued and you kind of drop your hands. But part of it was, it really was a challenge because of my left shoulder. Probably, unless I really was training for something special, training for a fight or something, where I would say, I got to make this as strong as the right side. My left shoulder is never going to be the same, again, as my right shoulder. And so it was a natural kind of twitch in my jab and everything that Paul finally let me off the hook after many months of torture. But in that, and I'll bring that up too, also train with the right person. I mean, at the end of the day, at any age, but as you get older, train with the right person. Don't train with the dude who's going to treat you like a 25-year-old and tell you to throw harder. And, I'll go with some unnamed sources who I've trained with in the past who they push you hard and you get into it because you're competitive. But at the end of the day, it's not good for you and it's not good for your body. And that's why I was wrapping myself for 15 minutes. Paul will use our first 2 rounds on the pads as my warm-up because he knows that I'm not disciplined with my warm-up. When the 3 of us, Tom and Matt, when we train, we kind of start slow and then start to get into it. Well, we start really slow and then we get to our full speed, which is still slow. But we do at least increase it, right? But Paul, and I mean this as a compliment, Master knows his students, and especially guys like us who spend a lot of time doing, privates with them, or, 3 or 4 of us guys, where Paul knows that I'm coming in cold. And so he's not gonna kill me on that first set. It's gonna be more like pop, 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 pop. Let's get your body going. Let's get warm. Let's get some movement. Throw some light kicks, and then we'll start to add some momentum and pace to it after that. And so he makes sure that I warm up when I don't warm up, and that's important. Get the right trainer to understand what you're trying to accomplish, but to optimize your workouts and to save your body. It's no fun being sore, especially as you get older, because you don't heal very quick.
All right, I'd like to thank Mike and Master Paul for joining us today. I think we had a lot of fun and learned a lot. You can reach Goldie at Goldie on TV, and you can find Master Paul McGowan at Chandler MMA in Tempe, Arizona. And of course, if you need me, you can reach me at Dr. Matt Colby, just about everywhere on social media, or drmattcolby.com.